And welcome back to the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Championship 2024 qualifier. Jordan Kent alongside EE and Charles. We're getting set for the Northwest region, but before we introduce you to our fighters for the day, we want to tell you about a special opportunity where you can flex your competitive muscle. Make sure you take your chance to sign up for the Nintendo Versus Challenge Cup June 2024 tournament. That's going to be June 16, 3 p.m. through 6 p.m. That is in-game, so make sure you get a chance to join that. And now we'll turn our attention to the Northwest, the Pacific time zone here for most of these fighters as we get set to introduce you to our bracket here in just a moment. But first of all, we've talked about fighter diversification. We are going to see it here today because Major, according to our crack research here, plays a Ganondorf. Charles, do not adjust your screens.
Yeah, and like you said, Jordan, if you look at a lot of different tier lists, well, my boy Ganon usually on the bottom
they
five.
They gave him his own tier at the bottom.
Yeah, it's pretty rough
Completely
out there.
different tax bracket right there.
Yeah, it's rough for Ganondorf, and I mean, one of the things that can make it pretty difficult to be consistent with this character is just the lack of recovery, right? That up special does go quite the distance. The Dark Dive can cover a lot of ground, but that double jump, not the best in the game. Probably the worst in the game.
I think EE has a better double jump in real life than him. And
it's sad but true.
You got Mark SD King, a very familiar name that we've seen in a lot of these online tournaments. We'll pilot Rob.
Yeah, Mark is essentially like on the other side of the spectrum when it comes to fighters here, because Rob is such a highly touted character in the competitive field. Just a great character. I mean, every kind of tool that you would want out of a character, he has it. He can zone, he can box, he can recover, everything, an all-in-one package of just great diversity.
And then for Era, we've got Steve, and for Sawstep, we're going to see a Pit as well too, Charles. So you said it before, we've got some meta, some anti-meta here today.
Yeah, it's a great spread. Obviously, Steve and Rob, very, very good, very common character in a lot of these Super Smash Bros. Tournaments. But Ganon, Pit, way less uncommon. Of course, Pit, the only time you usually see it at top level of play is it out in Japan. Shouts to Zachary.
Hey.
Very amazing player to watch. And I'm very excited to see, Pit, another character that's similar to Rob, but I would say not as overwhelming in each department. I think Pit is a very well-rounded character, but just not overwhelmingly well-rounded.
Yeah, I hear you.
Here we go, Rob versus Ganondorf, Major, and Mark SD King. Just a refresher on the rules, 1v1 clearly, and it's a best of 3 when it comes to each match. Double elimination, and so far we're going to see what Major can do with this Ganondorf. A couple of 1-2 hits in the aerial, but a nice recovery from Mark SD King, and you got to watch out for that Robo Beam and the Gyromite, as we see right here.
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you, Rob has a number of tools that are good. If Ganon finds himself off of the stage, likely should not be coming back, right? That is kind of like one of the hallmarks of Rob, is the ability to really just edge guard. And of course, a character like Ganondorf, as Charles highlighted earlier, very limited in that aspect. So it's going to make it that much more difficult. Great catch with the gyro, no chance to come back, and that's going to be first stock going the way of Mark SD King.
And EE pointed out here, Charles, so many tools at your disposal, and when you mix that combined with Major and Ganondorf that don't have enviable recovery, we'll just put it that way, that's going to be a tough matchup already on paper.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And any of these forward airs connecting, of course, the arm rotor to go ahead and trap the air dodge. And now in that situation, Mark is not going to be able to make it back, but you are perfectly comfortable making that stock trade being up an entire stock, Jordan.
And especially getting them down to final stock as well, too, EE. And those are some of the decisions that you can make when you've got the lead. You have that flexibility, those options, and so far, we're seeing why Rob is such a popular choice, especially for these online tournaments. The mix of zoning and upfront tools that you have, especially against a Ganondorf.
Oh, 100% agreed with you. I mean, Rob, like I said, just, a Swiss Army knife of a fighter, right? Just has everything you could imagine, as Ganondorf is finding out the hard way. But I will say something for Major's credit. Did not get here by accident, okay? You don't just pilot Ganondorf and make it the top 4 of anything. However, sometimes you're going to run into a wall, and that wall is the form of a robot warrior known as Rob, and that puts to a little bit of a dirty way to end game 1, Jordan.
Yeah, analytical approach took 1 minute and 42 seconds for Rob to take all 3 stocks right there, and now you're starting to see why Rob is such a popular pick as well, too. Now, that was a very small stage. Let's keep that in mind here as well, too. And if you're Ganondorf, I don't know if that plays to your advantage or not, Charles, but it seemed like Rob just completely dominated control of the stage for that entire game.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you make these stage smaller, that's when gyro, the item that Rob spawned, takes up more area, right? So it can be a little hard for Major to go ahead and navigate through all those different traps and setups here.
Random stage select, by the way. We should remind you of that right now.
Yeah. But now, Town and City a little bit wider than Smashville here. So going to have a similar layout when it comes to these platforms. I mean, there's one in the center at the beginning. Ooh, I like that, getting back onto the stage here for Major. Ledge trap to the left side. That up air still very solid, takes up a lot of area. And for Major, the way you're going to win this is you got to get these hard reads, right? Yep. That's the one thing about Ganondorf. It can be very slow and cumbersome, but when the hit connects, it hurts.
And so far, Major at the disadvantage, but you see connects with the up air in that situation. Mark SD King gets back on stage. Major another connection with the Nair, and now we're starting to see some of the reads come into play here, EE.
Yeah, kind of getting a favorable roll off this random stage select, being with a larger stage and really putting that to use right now. Flame choke to get back on. Love that. Tries to set up for the back air. Nobody home, however, but that percentage that's been accumulated on Rob, I'm liking that a lot for Ganon, who of course is just full of hard-hitting moves, and that fair, one of the best.
Point. So, Major able to take the first stock, the first earned stock, we should say, against Mark SD King, and now has the lead, and don't sleep on it. As you said, EE, a reason why Major was able to get here. But Charles, going back to you, those gyromites allow Mark SD King to establish so much stage control and manipulate where their opponent is going.
Yeah, I mean, Rob just having the items as well as large active hitboxes, neutral air, and the back air just so commanding in neutral here. But wow, look at that. Already 77% gets both hits of that down smash. Major now has the lead here, but still has the percentage lead. Not so much the stock lead here.
No, it's 2-2 at this point, and now you get the sense of your Mark SD King. You try to utilize your mobility here, that advantage, and use some of those zoning tools to poke, but it's Major that's starting to, once again, read Mark SD King much better this game than the last one, EE.
Loving the follow-ups, too, man. That flame choke, great utilization, and just leading that right into a dash attack, and then right there, the KO as well. Do not ever sleep on a Ganondorf player who is motivated. My man Major making some major moves and saves that double jump as well, so that off-stage threat of Rob not even going to be a problem.
And that's going to be the challenge, of course, is that recovery. And if you are Major, you just have to stay in the middle of this stage here. The more time you spend off stage, the more trouble you're in, Charles. And now all of a sudden, Mark SD King has essentially tied this thing up.
Yeah, not a lot of things and options Major could do there. The air dodge to avoid the projectile, and then the time. I mean, because of that timing so low for that up B, that it gave Mark so much time to set up that down air here. Okay, gets control of the gyro. Oh, I like this. Still has control. Throwing out these nairs, waiting for it, but wow, the double fair coming out from Mark. Wait, oh man, that platform could have been that stock there, going high. Jordan, Major still trying to find a way to seal the deal here. 68%, but one solid hit could be everything.
That's pretty much what Major needs here. Don't forget Rob, certainly on the heavier end, but is this a, oh, how about that? A Major upset, takes the second game, and take your tier list and crumple it up at this point, because my goodness, what an impressive comeback there for Major.
That was such a brazen anti-air. Okay, you're gonna try and land with Rob, land with Nair, which Rob loves to do. I'm literally just gonna up smash you, bro. I'm over here benching 1,000 pounds. What is this steel trap trying to land on me gonna do? Absolutely nothing. Love that option from Major, and giving those low tier mains out there, Jordan, a little bit more hope.
Brings us to game 3. And now if you are Major, you got to be feeling very confident, because all of a sudden you answered the call after Mark SD King was very dominant, Charles, in that first game.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that time we saw Major really staying on stage. Not a lot of low percent edge guards on the side of Mark. So great stuff to Major there. And again, getting those hard reads. Oh, tries to set up the combo there, especially with the gyro in hand. If you go ahead and get the nair into the recatch nair, it can be so fast these stocks get erased.
And already, EE, you're seeing the difference with Mark SD King just really walling out Major, not giving him too many options to approach. And here we go, Major able to string together a couple of hits.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the fact, too, notice the stage that, Random Select granted him. Another wide stage here, right back to Town and City. We're definitely going to appreciate that. I think Major going to utilize that to the best of their ability. But Mark SD King maybe just needs to slow it down a touch, right? Throwing out a lot of hits, and the counter hits from Ganon, though, can be very damaging. Comes up a little bit short on that flame choke attempt. Oh my goodness, but talk about a little ping pong with the gyro assist. Beautiful first stock removal from Mark SD King.
Oh, you love to see it. Mark SD King, a technician at this moment, but don't count out Major, because Charles, all it takes is one solid hit at this point, and Major just has to get back on stage. But now Mark SD King starting to create a little bit more separation.
He gets the roll through and catches the spot dodge, and that up smash so well placed. Major definitely an up smash expert with this character. Not only does it act as the anti-air, but can catch some of these spot dodges, which is such a strong option in Ultimate.
Both fighters on their second stock. Winner advances to winners finals. Major trying to take a fighter that many people feel is at the very bottom of all the tier lists against Rob, a very popular pick online. Mark SD King trying to keep Major off the stage as we have a Major advantage, but now Major showing all the tools, can't recover there, and now it is a 2-1 stock lead. Mark SD King here, EE, in full control.
Actually got a little fortunate that Ganon's recovery leaves a lot to be desired, because that original fair attempt for Mark SD King did whiff, so the fact that I couldn't get up there in time was enough. Nice. The dark dive going to allow some separation to get the recovery back, but again, nobody home for flame choke. This is a good situation for Mark SD King to be in. All he has to do, Jordan, not be too overzealous. Just let the game come to him. He should ideally be okay. Going to survive that forward tilt, but I would not want to take another one.
No, Gyro Mike coming off the stage. Major trying to give Mark SD King a taste of his own medicine. Can Major recover? No!
Oh!
The extra hit! A gift from Rob that keeps Major alive, and all of a sudden, we still have more life here in Game 3, Charles.
Oh my goodness. In that scenario, Mark wanted to just win the game with a little extra sauce, maybe try to send a message home, but actually ends up saving Major. Now Major back on the stage. This, you
Listen,
do not want to lose this game.
Needed some of that Mario Party Luigi advice. Just do nothing and you'll win. But there it is. Mark SD King, after giving Major a second breath, able to take Game 3, advances to winners finals. But Major put up quite the fight, especially in Games 2 and 3. And hey, you love to see it. Character diversification at its finest on display right
maybe
there.
I shouldn't say this, but I started to
Let me be your friend and say, don't say it.
I started to root for Major because I didn't like that front running that Mark was doing with that attempt on the spike there for the final stock to put the exclamation point on. Get out of here. That's just disrespect. Well, I didn't like that.
Well, I know you don't like front runners. You're a Clippers fan, so you're good to go. So, Charles, we get set here for winners finals here in just a moment. But obviously, a terrific job there from Mark SD King. Listen, sometimes things don't go your way when you try to make hard reads. You still have to come back, take that final stock, and you just see that everything that Rob has at its disposal to put a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that Mark SD tried to flex on the low tier. That's the funny part. If it was any other character, that's fine, but against Ganon, it is very funny. Mark SD was still able to close it out, though. Even with the stock stave, able to close things out and get the Ganondorf off the stage with that up smash going off the top, catching the KO. So amazing stuff to Mark. Now moving on, and you really can't sleep on this Ganon, right? Was able to take a game, and that Game 3 was still somewhat competitive on that last stock as well. So right now, I mean, Major could take it all the way home with Ganon, but Major's going to have to do it from the loser side now.
Yes, has a long path. Let's go ahead and check out the bracket after our first winner semis. Mark SD King is moving on. That sets up the matchup between Era and Sawstep as we get set for our second winner semifinal in this Northwest region. And Era will have Steve. We saw Steve in the Northeast here, EE, and it's about blocks and resources and everything else that people see at high-level play with Steve. But Sawstep with Pitt. Pitt, one of those fundamental fighters. And what are you looking to achieve with Pitt with the tools that you have at your disposal?
Well, Pitt is a deceptively great character. Like, you know, and you said, like, fundamentals carry a lot in the usage of this character. Really good on-stage presence, can go off-stage. Great projectile with Palatina's bow as well. So a lot of different tools at Pitt's disposal that if you are a fundamental genius, which a lot of Pitt players are, Zachary, tend to be, it's going to work out really well for you. I want to say one thing, though, about Era here. You know, you mentioned Steve, and of course we point out the fact that as far as the fighters are going, Steve tends to be top of the list, but it doesn't guarantee victory. Look at the Northeast just moments ago, Steve, and he didn't win that. So who's to say Era will? You know what I'm saying? So don't let the fighter intimidate you. It's all about how the match unfolds.
Very, very wise words there, you wise sage. And so as we get set here for Steve, let's go back to the strategy, though, here, Charles. You want to make sure that you're dominating stage control. How does Steve best do that?
Yeah, Steve is a unique character because you have different block formations depending on your position, right? If you are at the edge of the stage, you can go ahead and put a wall. Usually that 1x3 formation is the most common one we see in competitive play. That 1x3 behind you, so if you go ahead and get hit horizontally, you can go ahead and tech on the wall. That's a defensive wall. Yep. Then the other one is where, I mean, I wouldn't say it's more offensive, but you use the wall to separate you and your opponent, to force the opponent up and over the blocks or force them to hit the blocks, right? And while they're doing that, it gives you time to mine your resources. So using resources to go ahead and get more resources or manipulate how your opponent approaches or attacks, such a strong tool coming out for Steve.
And you also brought up the point in the Northeast region, when your opponent is trying to fight their way through the blocks, that gives you an opportunity to start to approach them as well, too.
Right, you can go ahead and swing back at them for going through the blocks, which is why it's such an important tool to have that range, right? And we've seen fighters like Cloud really give Steve a hard time because that back air, or any of these sword characters especially, right, they can go ahead and hit the blocks and hit Steve on the other side as well because they have that range. Now, Pit's going to have a little bit of that in the back air, but not going to quite have the range of the Buster Sword.
Right. But we've got Dark Pit here, EE, and so now we get a little bit more nefarious here in this matchup against Steve, and so far it's going to be Era coming out to a nice little lead, 49-0 out the gate here, EE.
Yeah, and that's maybe not so much of a surprise, right? You kind of expect Steve to kind of get that, you know, that guaranteed damage as he should towards those lower percents. Now it's going to be up to SawStep to step his way through the blocks and the combination of defensive options that Steve is going to put out there and really chip into the lead. You cannot let things get too far out of hands. I do like the fact of picking, though, Dark Pit, because you get more versatility with your arrows. You can curve them a little better, and that's going to allow you to kind of get into some of those tricky spots Steve might be hiding.
And the problem is, Charles, wow, taking the first stock. As you know, Dark Pit certainly not the heaviest fighter on this roster, and the issue is these blocks are just gobbling up a lot of these arrows that come through, and that doesn't allow Dark Pit to provide that zoning pressure that he's so well known for.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Already Diamond, when you're seeing Diamond this early on in the game, I mean, 3 stocks online here for Era, this is going to be a tough hill to climb for SawStep here. Okay, finally going to connect the Nair, but I mean, just so much to catch up on. And the second Diamond insurance for the second stock here, Era looking really good on resources, Jordan.
And that minecart taking SawStep for a ride. SawStep trying to recover, and it is just Era with all sorts of ledge trapping options, and now just building up even more resources. And SawStep finally able to come in and get a little bit of damage, but it's still Era chilling at 62% here, EE.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot describe to you how comfortable Era looks right now in an absolutely commanding position, really putting it to SawStep, who at this moment just really has not found any opportunities to get his offense flowing with any kind of fluidity at all. This is like just such a runaway match for Era. This Steve is putting in a lot of work.
Minecart for another KO, 3-1 stock lead for Era. Era getting back onto the stage. SawStep just trying to think of a different approach here at this moment. No blocks on the stage here, Charles. This is when you feel like SawStep can afford to be a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, you got to try to find the stock here. The dash attack is an option. Tipper back here as well. Trying to get the drag down from the forward air, but now all the frame trapping coming out from Era. Utilizing that block, trying to get the down tilt. Another opportunity here for SawStep. Gets the reflect, but it's still not enough since Steve was on the minecart here. And every single opportunity that Era has to lose the stock, still surviving and now turning the situation in Era's favor.
Yeah, you get the sense that SawStep has to work so hard to try and get Era off the stage, whereas for Era, you've got all sorts of options, Charles, to get that KO.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even there's so much to respect as well. Full rage on Steve. You got to be really careful because that minecart's going to hit so hard. Okay, going to have a trade here, so not going to get the charged smash attack follow-up. But now going ahead and crafting the gold. Not going to be as powerful as Diamond, but the fastest weapon that Steve has available here.
And so far, Era still hanging in there. EE at 162, and you've got all sorts of options. That minecart continues to be a wonderful zoning tool, but you finally get the first stock taken by SawStep.
Yeah, it took a while to get there, but the dash attack is at least going to close out that first one. But what a hill it is to climb right now, and having any hopes of taking down this Steve menace. Nice little combination strings, though. Okay, SawStep picking it up a little bit later into this first game, but I do like the signs of life that I'm seeing. Minecart, though, able to connect, and that's pretty much going to be the perfect setup to put him in the blast zone and put Era up 1-0 in winter semis.
Era not breaking a sweat as they build that first game lead over Sawstep. And really, Charles, just we saw the different ways that those blocks were buying time for Era to not only mine for resources, but just to negate any of the arrows. I mean, so much of that pressure that you can put on people as a pit fighter, you weren't able to do because those blocks were blocking everything.
Yeah, and that's one thing that makes blocks so powerful. It blocks away the projectiles as well. So it forces some of these other characters that rely on the range of the projectile to get a little bit up more close and personal here and interact with that block. And, you know, the longer you take to take down those blocks, the more time Steve has to mine here. You have a different stage. Kalos is the stage here for this game number 2. This is where Steve is going to mine a little slower, but going to have access to a little bit more iron, Jordan.
It's such a good point that you're now going to slow down some of the mining capabilities of Steve, but at this point for Sawstep, you're still facing the 62-22 disadvantage. How does Sawstep start to be a little bit more aggressive and put some pressure here on Steve EE?
Well, I think Sawstep has the right idea of like, okay, I need to close the gap and, you know, be aggressive, get in there. The problem is the approaches almost seem a little too telegraphed, right? There's a lot of spots where I'm noticing that Era is just like, oh, I'm expecting you to throw out this aerial or this grab attempt, and that's where I'm going to capitalize off. Definitely a little bit more restrained in this game number 2, and I'm seeing the difference in the fact that mixing up the approach is not seeing as telegraphed. That if that can keep up, if that kind of pressure can keep up, love the use of that upper dash arm, by the way. If that kind of pressure can keep up, though, it could be a very different tale in game number 2.
So far, Era with the advantage, reflects the minecart back. Nice little read there from Sawstep. Era still just mining for materials. Up smash going to take the first stock, though, Charles.
Just like that. That up smash pretty quick here for Steve and able to go ahead and scoop up players from the ground there and just combo itself right up into that final hit and see if Era can also extend this lead. You can see the Guardian Orbiters coming out for Sawstep in anticipation that the Anvil will come down for the reflect, but the down air into the up smash kind of returning the favor. Up smash for up smash here, Jordan.
Sawstep doing a fine job of starting to even this thing up. Quickly takes that first stock and doesn't take too much damage on the second one, but now all of a sudden Era has just racked up some damage with that combo and has got back to their stage control here, EE.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I noticed that after getting that KO too, a little bit of a taunt as well, letting you know, hey, I'm still very much so in this game. Don't sleep on me despite the deficit facing right now. Still possible to bring this one back. I do like Kalos a lot, of course, for Steve. Those mining opportunities are going to be tremendous, but thus far, Sawstep, despite trailing, still keeping it pretty competitive, but I don't want to see too much overzealousness be the downfall of this pit. That was what got him in trouble a lot in game number 1, and we know how that one ended.
So far, Era very comfortable. Anvil coming out, just providing a little bit of space to build those resources. Arrow does connect, but it's Sawstep sitting at 108, which is very precarious for Pit. And Era having all sorts of time already at the goal here, Charles.
Oh, the minecart. Okay, able to mash out just in time and no follow-up from Era as well. So now Sawstep with the into the down smash. It was almost enough. Tries to get the neutral B snipe, but oh man, what a recovery coming out from Era using the wings, ending up on stage here against Sawstep.
And so Sawstep doing a better job this time, just being aggressive in this neutral and putting pressure on Era. Sends Era flying high. Era lands comfortably on that left plat. And now, if you're Era, you've got to be a little bit more careful. You were playing around with your meal earlier here, EE, but now it's essentially a tie game. But up smash with a second stock will give Era the advantage.
That up smash was really good too, because that's just full on. I'm just predicting where your next move is going to be, and absolutely comes out on top with that decision making. So Sawstep still very much so in this battle, but do not let Steve put on all kinds of percent. These lower percents, he can be he's a monster anytime, but right now this is where it can start to tack up. But nice, Sawstep able to avoid a good chunk of that. Notice the aggression, Jordan, picking those spots, but he's just not able to connect that final blow yet.
Able to make Era pay for trying to get the command grab, and here we go, down to the final stock. Sawstep trying to force a Game 3. Era trying to advance to winners finals. Just over 3 minutes left, one of the longer games we've seen here, and now a couple of up tilts coming out from Era, racking up that damage, and now builds the wall on the side and can mine for all sorts of resources here, Charles.
Oh man, and the diamond weapons are online. We almost got a full meter of resources here. Great way to avoid all the traps and setups, but a little overswing coming out from Sawstep. Era now just going to go ahead and build the blocks. Sawstep able to get back onto the stage. Great down tilt to get things started here, Jordan.
And tried to build the blocks to create a wall to prevent the recovery there, but able to fight through it here. And now, saw step, don't count them out quite yet. 72 to 109. You see the reflection coming out here just a little bit, trying to fight through that wall again. Era mining for materials. EE, is the minecart going to do it? Yes, it does.
Yeah, Jordan, absolutely. That is going to be enough. And you saw to a point those Guardian Orbiters were doing a great job in the reflection, but you can't do that forever. That's the problem. No. And I think at some point, Era was like, okay, at some point this minecart, it's going to get its due, and sure enough, it did. But I want to give a big shout-outs to Sawstep for completely 180ing it. Turned it around from what we saw in game number 1. Made it very competitive. Even in a losing effort, I think that bodes well for him in trying to make some sort of run in losers bracket.
Absolutely, and you see what they were able to do with that Pit fighter, and obviously, it's an interesting matchup. Sometimes you look at fighters here, Charles, and there's just some that naturally bode an advantage for the other, and you feel like in a situation where Steve can build walls to block the projectiles, that doesn't really go in the favor of Dark Pit, and so credit what we saw there from Sawstep with Pit.
Yeah, Sawstep did an incredible job using every single tool, and characters like Pit, where you're using a very wide range of tools. We like to call them toolbox characters, where you're using a bunch of different tools for a bunch of different situations, can be very challenging against a character like Steve, because Steve can sometimes even multiply the amount of situations that Super Smash Bros. Even has, because you are spawning in blocks, right? Yep. Very unique character to the game. So I love how Sawstep approached that second game. Like EE said, it can be so discouraging after that game 1. Some fighters might just break down and give up, but great stuff to Sawstep. Still making that game 2 look very competitive. And, shouts to Era as well. We saw so many times that Sawstep was going for the reflect on the anvil, and Era didn't get hit by that a single time. That was a clear part of the strategy coming out from Pit. And, Era did an incredible job as well, just closing that out 2-0 and seeing where Pit was trying to get those stocks, right? And when the anvil gets reflected, oh my goodness, you can lose your stocks so early. So Era knew the matchup as well. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and check out the bracket as we get set for winners finals. It's going to be Mark SD King with Rob versus Era and Steve. And EE, early thoughts on this matchup, because you've got Rob with all those tools, and clearly Steve has a lot of tools to work with.
This is about as meta as it's going to get, right? Like, both of these characters are very heavily represented in the competitive meta. You see them a lot of times on these prevalent online tournaments as well. This is kind of, you look at the characters there, this is almost kind of what you expect from the particular matchups, and that's no shade towards my fellow, Pit players out there, or Ganondorf players out there. No shade at all. It's just kind of, sometimes the status quo is what it is. But with this one, I'm definitely looking for Rob to be super aggressive against Steve, especially when Steve is off of the stage, right? That is the time where Rob is going to use that robo laser, that gyro, really even go off stage and get that forward air, trying to kind of clip that that gliding recovery of Steve as well. A lot of different options that we're going to see utilized from Rob to get that stock off, and you're going to need every single one of them.
Well, let's see how it goes here. We have got Era versus Mark SD King for a chance in Grand Finals. Game 1, here we go. We'll head out to Pokemon Stadium 2, and now we're going to get an early look here, Charles, and take us through some of this beginning action and what trends you're starting to begin to notice.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, right when the game starts, right at go, that's when Steve is at his weakest, right? The dirt blocks have the least amount of health, and the tool is the lowest upgrade, going to be that wooden tool. So we're going to see Rob do an incredible job of going through the dirt blocks with that neutral air, and Rob has a good amount of disjoints. Rob doesn't necessarily have a sword, but the boosters coming out from Rob can be quite the disjoint from the down air, the nair, and the back air as well.
That Robo Beam trying to apply a little bit of pressure as well, too. It's Era building the advantage. Has the wall there, finally, EE, to start mining for some better resources.
Well, yeah, Era knows exactly, and Charles said it best, this is where Steve is at his weakest. But just kind of weather that storm and get your resources up, and then you're going to be able to see, okay, Steve is going to start taking a more of a commanding position, especially when that crafting starts to come out. So a lot of good openings and opportunities right now for Era, and really punishing Mark SD King for just trying to come in there and cut the distance that's between them.
So far, it's gotten a little bit slower in the action, just back and forth as you see Era really just trying to build up those resources, and now well prepared to take on Rob head on, as now Mark SD King just trying to get back on stage here, Charles.
In the back air, the diamond, and Mark playing a bit of a slower neutral here, and that means Era is going to have more time to get the resources here. So because of that, going to have access to go ahead and take out Rob a bit early here. Rob, known as one of the heavier fighters in Super Smash Bros. So just going to be, when you're able to get diamond so early and get rid of that stock so early, it's going to be such a help. Mark evening things up with an up air, only taking 8% here, Jordan.
The famous Rob up air claims another stock, and so now we get down to the second stock for both fighters, and it's pretty even. This is what we expected, and it's kind of funny. If you are Mark SD King, you go from fighting one spectrum of the tier list to the other spectrum of the tier list in back-to-back matches.
Yeah, my opening round is Ganondorf. I'm like, okay, a couple close calls, but then it's like, oh, Steve is next. Oh, Lord. It's definitely a very, very sliding scale for sure, but I think he's done a great job handling so far, obviously trailing in the percentage. The way that the blocks are being set up by Era, very unique in that aspect, right? I think Era kind of maybe accounting for anything that could go haywire once Mark inevitably is able to breach those defenses, but I'm definitely enjoying what I'm seeing thus far. And that minecart, never putting you in the position you want to be, but Rob afforded the ability to recover so high and go right to that left platform and reset the situation.
And as we saw, Era really utilizing those minecarts to create a little bit of spacing. Anvil comes out. That'll take stock number 2, and Era with a sizable advantage here with Mark SD King on the final stock, Charles.
Great stuff coming out from Era. A little stall and then a fall coming out with the Anvil. Very powerful, able to take out Mark SD. Second stock here, and now you see all these resources, a lot of iron and a lot of stone here for Era. And that's the great thing about Pokemon Stadium. You're just going to get access to a lot of the stone and the iron, so it's going to be hard materials to cut through, and you even see Mark having to do a couple, maybe even 3 nairs just to get through it, and that's going to be such a big deal. Okay, Era getting a little aggressive with that up. You can actually combo off of that as well.
Yep.
So far, Era doing an excellent job of building this advantage here with the 2-1 stock lead. The Anvil misses. Mark SD King, excellent recovery, flies high to drop back down. But as you said before in EE, as we're seeing just those constant walls that Mark SD King is having to fight through, just slowing his approach down and giving Era all sorts of time.
Yeah, I'm loving the placement from Era. Very, very slick and smooth with how he's putting out these blocks, and again, giving himself plenty of time to mine, craft, and continue to put himself in such a strong advantage state. I mean, you see it, the minecart going to lead to some diamond destruction, and yet again, Era taking game number 1 in convincing fashion.
And just the patience of Era, Charles. I mean, you start off, as you said before, you really don't have much to work with, but as you build those resources, now you dictate the pace of that particular game by building the walls and forcing Mark SD King and Rob to have to navigate so much traffic to get to you.
Yeah, and there's so many phases within the blocks breaking down as well. You even saw Mark go up to the block formation, go for down tilts, because once the bottom block is out, you can actually run through the entire block formation, no matter how tall your character is. But on the other side, Steve, if they see that Era was just going ahead and throwing minecarts underneath the block formation and going for the minecart while getting out of it for the command grab. So really smart stuff from Era, understanding where the block formation is at and what options to throw out accordingly.
Here we go, game 2. Era looking for an opportunity to head to grand finals early on, trying to make it 2-0 clean against Mark SD King. Has built a nice little lead here early on. That back air so quick, comes out so many times here. EE catches Mark SD King not once but twice.
There's a reason Steves are very comfortable in throwing that option out, right? It can be very safe, especially with the right space mine, and of course, as you alluded to, Jordan, a lot of power as well. And we're not even talking about it being pumped up with gold or diamond up to this point, so easy ways to accumulate a lot of damage. A little bit of a swing and a miss there from Mark SD King, but keeping himself very much so in this first game. I like the attempt with the arm rotor, but nobody home there in the dash attack, or excuse me, the down smash, gonna eat up that position.
But to the defense of what we're seeing from Mark SD King, we saw a missed up smash from Era, and that led to about a 60% combo for Mark SD King, and takes the first stock and all of a sudden turns the tables on this game 2.
The arm rotors using those reflective properties to benefit Mark SD King, and that was quite benefit. Oh my goodness!
Oh no, a second stock and a huge mistake there by Era, and all of a sudden this is all in the hands of Mark SD King with a 3-1 advantage.
Yeah, Mark found himself in a situation where it's like maybe he expected to get here, but certainly not by these means, Jordan. This is a tremendous game number 2 for him, and looking like game number 3 is certainly going to be on the table. Our winners finals getting that much more compelling as Mark continues to add to this lead, and Era seemingly no answers thus far.
And so far, Mark SD King has been able to be the aggressor because Era not having the resources or the time to build some of these blocks, and it feels like you just have to continue to put the pressure on. You can't let Era breathe, but all of a sudden, the up smash will take the first stock of Mark SD King.
And I'll tell you what, if that was the second stock, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable saying
I thought it was the second stock,
exactly.
too. I still can't believe it's 2-1, and that just shows you how good of a start that Mark SD King got off to. And now it's going to be fascinating to see what Era will do. You saw the charged up smash, no luck right there. But now here comes a couple of more gyro mites, the Robo Beam trying to chase and just not trying to provide any time whatsoever for Era to prevent them from building those blocks.
Yeah, Era understands, like, okay, like this is some dire straits that I'm finding myself in. Obviously, Steve does have the ability to make this comeback, but it gets that much more harder when that percentage continues to rise and you find yourself in positions like that. Exactly. Rob up air. Sometimes it's known to rob the stock, but right there I'm going to say that was harder, Jordan. Harder.
It really was. Even though one stock was essentially gifted to you, you still had to take those other two, and you worked your way for that. So now that forces the game 3 to try and get into grand finals, and I think the adjustment's going to be whether or not Mark SD King can keep that constant pressure up, because we saw all of a sudden that puts what we saw from Era on the back foot for the most part and doesn't have the time to build those resources and dictate stage control. So we'll see what the adjustment will be here in game 3 to punch a ticket to grand finals.
All right, let's see what stage we're going to get. It looks like we're playing on that Smashville. That's going to be Smashville. Okay,
I'm leaving that up to you.
Yes. Don't worry, man. I just made an educated guess and got lucky on that one. But here we are, game number 3, winners finals.
Not throwing you any help there, my friend. And so here we go. A couple of up airs to get the string going here, and already a 40% advantage for Era. And this is what we're seeing. If we can get you off the stage, Era will be able to start building up those walls and mining for those resources. And I think making a conscious effort to realize I've got to build up my repertoire a lot more than what I did last game.
I like the fact that it's kind of a quick offense unfolding for Era as well, too, right? Understand, like, okay, you're probably expecting me to maybe a little bit more on the defensive side considering it's the early part of the game, but no, I will take the fight right to you, and it's actually benefiting thus far up until this point, putting some real big pressure on the shield with the anvil, and now the blocks making the recovery route a little bit more predictable, but Rob able to go high enough where it's not going to matter. But some crafting going on right now from Era to maybe be setting up a huge back air if the attempt is successful.
So far, both fighters essentially at the same percentage. Oh, that Gyromite snuffs out, interrupts some of the mining there, and that's going to change the flow of this already. And now that allows Mark SD King to be a little bit more familiar, but here comes the grab into the back throw.
I've seen a couple of up smashes from Mark SD King, so I have a feeling what he's looking for. He's looking for some powerful hits to try and put the stock away at some of those lower and mid percents for sure when it comes to dealing with Steve. And I don't blame him. You don't want to let this character hang around any longer than you have to. Great shield pressure. The minecart not going to be enough from center stage. Let's see what we're looking for.
But Era with all sorts of resources, exactly what you're looking for right now. And if you're Mark SD King, can you try and get in and try and get that down throw into up air possibility? We'll see. Getting a little bit closer, misses on the ledge right there, and makes Era pay right there. 100%. Era missing on the grab, and now that was an excellent read. What can Mark SD King do in this opportunity at this moment?
Well, what he needs to do is get back to the stage safely, and that's not what he's going to do.
No, don't get blown up by the TNT. Now we're down to second stock for both fighters, even at 0%, and now you're seeing some quick building going on as well, too, some quick crafting from Era.
And even though, you know what, Jordan, I will say, even though he did lose that stock, wasn't able to get some additional damage off of it, you're not trailing, right? That's what matters. The stocks are even, the percentages are both relatively low, and now you're letting that offense flow. Love the up airs, good control with the gyro, and of course, that Robo Laser can do some damage. And Rob, what I tell you, this character can get up with you, man, can definitely camp when needed, but can absolutely throw some hands and try to throw a huge haymaker with that up smash. Nobody's home, but I love the commitment from Mark SD King.
The AI takeover coming very close here in just a moment as Rob is starting to build a lead here. 102 to 46 on the second stock. Starting to really connect with a lot more of those gyromites and that Robo Laser. But so far, now you're seeing a better job of Era of avoiding those gyromites and getting in a little bit closer. Sets up the blocks, bounces Mark SD King off of them, and this is starting to pick up here.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we are going down to the wire at the moment. 2 stocks apiece and some really good resources on the side of Era, which, of course, you know, Mark has got to be careful of. And watch that burst option with the minecart come out of nowhere. Oh, I thought that was going to be a huge setup into an up air, but nobody home just yet. Little rinse and repeat from Era. Loves going for that minecart.
Saw an opportunity, missed on the grab, but Mark SD King couldn't make him pay, and so now both fighters playing on the ledge, but that's going to be it. The second stock is claimed by Era, sitting at 147. What can they do to build a little bit of an advantage? Oh, a critical 3-hit combo. That'll go a long way.
It really will, especially when that diamond is out there and being as active as it is. 153 from Era, but certainly not playing like it. Oh, but coming in big time with the arm rotor. That is just fearlessness at its finest, and exactly what Mark SD King needed to get back in this fight, Jordan.
Mark SD King trying to hang on. A spot in Grand Finals, Game 3. Final stock for both fighters. Everything that you look for in a particular match. And what can Era do? Era, all the materials that you need at this point. Has that gold sword, going to be a little bit faster here. But the up air coming out from Mark SD King. Whiffs a couple of times on the jab. Anvil coming out as well, too, and then chasing down Era. Here's the aggression from Mark SD King.
I mean, if we can get Steve off stage, I would love to see Mark be able to make a crazy read with the arm rotor and maybe swindle this final stock off and get that KO. It is coming down to the wire, though. Anybody's game. Got to play this super close to the chest on both parties. That minecart, though, we've seen it be the difference maker.
Oh, chases the minecart, though. Rob able to stay alive. The recovery. Era getting some opportunity to craft, though, all sorts of time. And now Era dominating the stage. The TNT on the right side going to close that off. Oh, but the down air punishing at that moment. Followed up by another nair, and this is going to be interesting here because Mark SD King started to rack up the damage, and now a lot of those confirms are well within sight.
Oh, 100%. This is terrifying on both ends. But the minecart, yes, a little bit empowered, gonna be enough to finally get the KO. We saw that Era, did not use those minecarts sparingly. Jordan was very committed to the bit, understood the plan and followed it thoroughly, and it results in a huge W. But Mark SD King, what a fight he put up.
Such a fight, but just so many options for Steve.
Crazy.
I mean, where can you go? You've got back airs, you've got minecart, you're getting to the gold, you're getting to the diamond. Puts tremendous pressure on Mark SD King, but that'll send Era to the Grand Finals. We'll go ahead and check out the bracket and let you know what things will be looking like here as we continue our action here shortly. Era moving on to Grand Finals, and our losers bracket is set. But before we get to that, standing by the telestrator is Charles to break down more of the action in this first part.
And of course, with all the different fighters we had, I had to get the Ganon clip. All right, so this Ganondorf major really doing some major plays here. And before I break down how good this play was, I have to explain this very common ledge trap setup coming out from Rob. So Mark SD, we're gonna go ahead and play the clip. Does hit Major off stage eventually with the back air to punish Mark SD, or to punish Major going for this roll in here. Very active hitbox on this back air. Now does have the gyro, we're gonna go ahead and pause it here. Now in this scenario, whenever Rob throws the gyro, or whenever any character throws the gyro is gonna be right here. So because of that, since Mark SD is facing in this direction, if Major does get hit by this gyro, you will get sent into this direction here. Because of that, Rob loves to set up this gyro formation and then stand right here. Because if you stand right here and Major gets hit by the gyro, then you're in perfect position for an up smash. But if the opponent also goes for a ledge roll, you're also in that same position. You're covering multiple options at the same time. There's a very few ways to get out of this ledge trap, and we're gonna see it right here coming out from Major. So right here, Major is going to go for the ledge jump, and because ledge jump is going to avoid this hitbox, goes for the instant Z catch. When you get Z catch, there's no ending lag, so it's going to let Major act from that and then use the gyro against Rob, and this is such a big deal against Rob, and it's really how you can turn the tide of battle, because that gyro, so good in Rob's hand, has so many deadly combos that can just get the KO, get the stock so early. So because of that, we're going to go ahead and play the clip and watch how Major utilized the gyro against Mark SD King. Goes ahead and throws it down, combos right into the forward air, and from cross screen is able to take the stock. So love watching players get really creative here and utilizing everything they can,
even if you are Ganondorf and you don't have a ton of options, you can still use some of your opponent's amazing options against them. And we saw Major do exactly that against Mark SD King. So many different fighters here in this tournament, some common ones and some uncommon ones. So just stick around. After this break, we're going to go ahead and finish the tournament.